special report, and he's joining us today. We're waiting for Rex Tillerson. He's going to take the podium there to give remarks, the first remarks that we'll hear from him, as he is now the outgoing Secretary of State. We haven't talked much about the replacement yet, and that is the CIA Director, Mike Pompeo. And Brett, you had an interview with him in December where you talked about this very possibility.
Yeah, it was at the Reagan Defense Forum, Dana, and that day before, the speculation and rumors had been circulating in Washington press that Rex Tillerson was going to be replaced by Pompeo, and that possibly Senator Tom Cotton was being talked about as somebody who could go to CIA. Following up on that story, I asked him as the first question in a forum with the director of CIA, Pompeo, and the former CIA director, Leon Panetta, about that position. And he kind of laughed it off and said he was going to work hard at the job he currently has. There's a lot of trust that Pompeo has with this president. He briefs him and has briefed him all the time, and they established a pretty close relationship by all accounts.
Wanted to also ask you about the what Rich Edson just brought up, which is that there was tension with Rex Tillerson from the very beginning. And Rex Tillerson always said that he was not a creature of Washington. He didn't understand it, and he didn't really fit in there, and he sort of wore that as a badge of honor. But on the policy standpoint, when it comes to the Iran deal, there was, as I understand it, some just differences from what the president wanted to do and what Rex Tillerson was trying to do to thread the needle, to see if he could keep the Europeans on board, but to try to meet what the president wanted to do, which is to drastically change the deal that Obama signed. Is that really at the heart of a lot of this?
Well, it's one of the issues that is definitely a tension, and the president even mentioned it today on the South Lawn, leaving for California. I think the Iran deal is on its last legs. If you look at the people in key positions here, you have Nikki Haley, who's advocated really for the U.S. to pull out. You have Mike Pompeo, who has been the same, really, since being on the Intelligence Committee. He has all along said there are no positives to the Iran nuclear deal. Really, it's only Jim Mattis at Defense who has suggested that the U.S. stay in it. So it's a big, big issue. I also want to point out on that timeline you just mentioned, Dana, here is a call from the White House Chief of Staff, as we understand it, John Kelly, on Friday to a traveling Secretary of State that he should resign or before he comes back, he's going to be fired. So he knows that. So I would look at that press briefing on that plane very carefully, because what he said there, he says it with the knowledge that he is just hours away from leaving this job.
It was interesting to me that he, in some ways, because it had been rumored for so long that he was going to leave. You know, and I wonder, Brett, and I'm going to ask my team if we have enough time as we wait for Rex Tillerson. He's going to speak at the State Department for the first time today. We're going to hear from him. But I wanted to ask you about the possibility that there might be other national security personnel moves. Take a listen to former UN Ambassador John Bolton, who was interviewed by Maria Bartiromo over the weekend. Watch.
There is speculation that you may be offered a job in the White House, NSA director. Are you readying to take that job?
You know, I never discuss that subject. I'm very boring whenever the personnel issues get raised. It's a long-standing view of mine not to discuss it.
So, Brett, I'm going to put that in Washington speak, which is that, yes, very much he's under consideration for the job. Do you think that this is maybe a move also? I mean, he's obviously, John Bolton, very strong and tough on the Iranians and also on North Korea. Could you foresee something like this happening and getting all of this changed around before these deals come to fruition?
I do think there are more changes ahead. Just from talking to folks around town, several reporters are hearing the same thing. Maggie Haberman with the New York Times and others have tweeted something similar. I do think there are a number of people who are in positions that have been talked about being changed out. As you mentioned, H.R. McMaster, National Security Advisor. John Kelly, Chief of Staff, has long been, you know, whether he's going to stick in or not is really a question. I think that this president does seem like he feels emboldened by his positioning now, and perhaps this Tillerson move is the beginning of trying to reshuffle the deck.
Right. It's almost like a Trump 2.0 in the second year. Rich Edson, if you've stayed with us, I wanted to ask you another question, which is about a lot of criticism inside Washington about the management of the State Department. What's the mood at the State Department amongst the career diplomats, sometimes referred to as Obama holdovers, which is not necessarily fair. A lot of them are career civil servants. You know, I read today that there was some relief at the State Department, that there would be new leadership. What are you hearing?
Well, a lot of the frustration had to come in a couple of ways when it came to what this administration and what the Secretary of State were pursuing here at the State Department. First off, the administration had been calling for a 30% budget cut here, more than a 30% budget cut. There's also a hiring freeze here. There's also a tough time for career diplomats to move within certain positions. They'd frozen a lot of transfers that people were looking to get here. So there are plenty of people within the State Department who aren't happy about that. There are people who in the State Department who also aren't happy about the fact that there are many top positions here, and the State Department just lost another undersecretary earlier today, that have gone unfilled. And now you have, on top of all of this, the slow process of nominees here. Now you have a new secretary coming in. So those who have finally been nominated and have not cleared the U.S. Senate, do they stay nominated, and does that process begin over again? So there was frustration with what the State Department called and the Secretary called the redesign here, what they were doing with personnel, how they were running things when it came to just the people of the State Department and the career diplomats here, and even the political positions that were left unfilled. Yes, perhaps those people see a ray of hope with the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson leaving, but it still is the Trump administration, and it's unclear if Mike Pompeo is going to have any more luck getting more appointees here and conducting diplomacy as a lot of these career people are used to.
Let me ask you, Bret Baier, about Mike Pompeo. I mean, by all accounts, the management at the CIA has gone swimmingly in the first year of the Trump administration. He has a very good reputation both amongst the political appointees and the career officials. He has designated his deputy, Gina Haspel. She would be the first woman to ever run the CIA, quite a significant accomplishment. Her nomination, however, may not be without controversy, as she is already being pilloried in much of the press for past activities. She was an undercover agent. She worked during many administrations, including the administration of George W. Bush, of which I also served. She was involved in the very tough process of having to interrogate potential suspects as the war on terror was underway. Your thoughts about her confirmation hearing coming up?
Yeah, it's going to be bumpy. There were Democrats already out with statements calling her the queen of torture. Obviously, a pejorative, but she was in charge of interrogations in certain aspects of the interrogation process. And you're well aware of the controversy surrounding that. The policy is what the policy is. This is not going to be something that scares or frightens away President Trump from saying that she's going to be a perfect CIA director. And as you know, inside the intelligence community, often people who have been in the intel community for years and years and years are more preferred in those top jobs because they know the system. And as you get ready to see the Secretary of State.
That's right. Well, listen.